Hello, wee ghosties. I'm Chance Lee,
And I'm Amanda McAvoy.
and this is That's So Gothic, a movie podcast about girls, guys, and haunted houses. If the houseboats are rockin', De Niro is knockin'. It's Cape Feare.
This town is so very nice, and everything's just so very, very nice. Sam, somebody's out there.
What's your connection with this fella?
I was his lawyer.
But you shackled him somehow, right?
And what was he in prison for?
No, really. What did you do? Have you been following me? It's a small town. Every way you turn, I guess we're gonna run into each other.
Dad, you should have just punched him out. Yeah, you know how to fight, Daddy. You do that for a living.
This guy, he threatened you?
He's clever, so that the law can't touch him.
You have a daughter around 16?
16? What?
Now come out wherever you are.
You, sir, will be hearing from the Ethics Committee.
We got this freaking psychopath in our faces. I mean, who knows what's true and what isn't?
I'm just losing my mind here.
I called the vet, and then he died.
I told you not to let him out.
I didn't let him out! I didn't let him out!
It would be unethical of me to advise the citizen to take the law into his own hands.
You thought about me last night, didn't you? Evening, ladies.
Hello?
I think we're alone now.
Where are you from?
I'm from the Black Forest. Maybe I'm a big bad wolf. Do you mind if I put my arm around you?
Released in 1991, Cape Feare was directed by Martin Scorsese. It has a screenplay by Wesley Strick, and it's based on a 1962 film of the same name, which was based on a book called The Executioners by John D. MacDonald. It stars Nick Nolte as Sam, an attorney, Robert De Niro as a psycho-religious ex-con, Max Cady, Juliette Lewis as Sam's daughter, Danny, and Jessica Lange as Sam's wife, Lee. And this is the story of an ex-con seeking revenge on the lawyer who failed him. So this movie was a commercial and critical success. Martin Scorsese in the 90s, like, of course it was.
Yeah.
It made over $182 million against a $35 million budget.
Wow.
And Ebert gave it 3 stars. And he said that in the original film, Sam Bowden was a good man trying to defend his family from a madman. But in this version, Bowden is flawed and guilty, and everyone in the film is weak in some way or another, and there are no heroes. He says that's the Scorsese touch. So he thought the film was impressive, but he also thought it was generic for Scorsese. So that's why he only gave it 3 stars.
Interesting.
What's your relationship with Marty?
I don't know that I have like a super strong one. I mean, as someone who grew up in Massachusetts, I mean, I watched The Departed a lot. I do have a very soft spot in my heart for that. You know, I haven't seen actually a lot of, I think this might be the oldest Martin Scorsese film I've ever seen. I actually have not seen a lot of his like really popular ones from the 80s. I just kind of refuse to because of like film bros ruining them for me.
Yeah.
But like I've seen, you know, Gangs of New York, The Wolf of Wall Street, you know, those ones. How about you?
It's interesting. I wouldn't say I'm a fan. I don't typically like mob movies.
Yeah.
Or Leonardo DiCaprio. So a lot of his movies
like
I don't connect with.
Yeah.
Yes. I do like De Niro. So I like Taxi Driver a lot.
Okay. Yeah.
And there's a really great one. I think it's called Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore with Ellen Burstyn and she's a waitress in a diner, and it's just like she's a single mom. It's the most like anti-Martin Scorsese movie you can think
Really?
of. It's
Yeah.
really good. But yeah, most of the time I tried to watch Goodfellas, and I was just like, oh,
Okay.
I don't care for the plot of this. But I love all of the directors that have been inspired by him. Like my first love of film was Boogie Nights. And that was the first movie that had me paying attention to like cinematography and shots and all those things. And then when I did watch Goodfellas for like 10 minutes, I was like, oh, everything I liked from Boogie Nights was cribbed directly from this movie.
Right.
So I can appreciate him for the creativity that he brought to the medium, even if the storytelling is not for me.
Right. Yeah, like I actually have been really in the mood to watch Shutter Island like this weekend after looking up some stuff for this movie, because I remember watching it when I was younger. I didn't like it because, you know, the whole like plot twist aspect and the story aspect just like did not resonate with me then. But I watched it a couple years ago and loved it because of like the style, the performances, the like aesthetic of it. So I definitely think that, I mean, it's not a hot take to say that Martin Scorsese is probably a pretty good filmmaker. I don't know. I know, controversial, right? But yeah, you know, I think his movies are, you know, the ones I've seen are at least entertaining for me. Wolf of Wall Street, I'll probably never watch again, but I saw it in theaters. I liked it. You know, great eyebrows.
He has my eyebrow goals. Like I hope to have eyebrows like him when I'm that age or sooner, tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'll take them now. I love a big eyebrow.
Get some eyebrow extensions.
Favorite feature, I know. So I do really appreciate that.
Amazing eyebrows.
Have you ever seen the original version of this?
No, and I almost started watching it. I borrowed this from our local library, and I went to go grab it off the shelf, and I was actually holding the older version in my hands for a while. I like brought it up to the desk and then looked down, and I was like, I don't think this is the newest version, and I put it back and requested the other one. But no, I've never seen it. Have you?
No, I haven't seen it either. I had seen this one before, like as a child. I remember my mom and grandmother had it on. They rented movies a lot. I remember it being on in the background and my mom talking about it a lot. And we'll get to it in a bit, but I also remember the Simpsons episode a lot and conflated the two quite a bit in the intervening 20 or so years. So we also have we've got a great cast in this movie. Robert De Niro with terrible hair. The hair is so bad. Like he's so fit and like from the neck down, very sexy in this movie. And then neck up, just a hot mess.
He looks somehow like older in this movie than he did in like a lot of the movies that came out in like the 2000s.
Yes.
He looks
he must have lost
aged.
A lot of weight fast or something.
Yeah.
And he has Ozempic face, pre-Ozempic.
This movie came out before I was born, and Robert De Niro already looked like he was ready to throw the towel.
Yeah, he looks rough. We have Nick Nolte, who I can't remember the last thing he was in. He was really hot in this time period. My mom like had a big lady boner for Nick Nolte.
Yeah.
Because of The Prince of Tides with Barbara Streisand.
Oh.
Movie I've never seen, also parodied by The Simpsons. And then Jessica Lange, I only really know her from American Horror Story.
That's what I was going to say, is I remember when American Horror Story came out, like she was the shining star of that show. And I remember always thinking like, she just came out of nowhere. Like that's what I thought. And the more obviously I find out about her, the more she's been an actress for a very long time, and she's incredible. She's so good in this movie.
She's very good. She doesn't have a lot to work with, but damn, she does her best.
Yes, she really does. And I mean, she's also just like so stunningly beautiful. Every time she's on screen, I'm like, I never want her to leave because I just want to stare at her.
She's
so
very
good.
pretty, even with her kind of bad 90s haircut. Like she still looks good. She makes it work.
She does.
And then we have Juliette Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this has got to be one of her earlier starring roles, because I first remember her from What's Eating Gilbert Grape, but she's very good in this.
Yeah, she is.
And no, I mean, this is offensive, but I never say that about Juliette Lewis. I never go, oh, she's so good in this.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I like her 90s work. I like this. I love What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
Yeah.
So I like, well, those two movies, but she has a lot to do, and she's very young. I think she was only like 20, 21 shooting this. So very young.
She looks very young. Yeah. Very convincing 15-year-old.
Yes, she's very good. And then, so this got parodied on The Simpsons, almost like scene for scene.
Yes.
They just did the whole movie in like 24 minutes or however long a Simpsons episode is with commercials.
Yeah. I didn't know that Simpsons episode was a parody of this until I started watching this movie. It hit me like a freight train. Like it was like literally the back shot of him doing the pull-ups or whatever.
Yeah.
Like you could see his back. And I just went, oh my God, sideshow Bob. I lost it. I couldn't believe it. There's so much in my life that I'm realizing. Like, I'm not a diehard Simpsons fan, but I, watched it a lot growing up, the Simpsons and Seinfeld block.
Yeah.
And there's so much I'm realizing that the Simpsons, not saying it's not good, but, not nothing, obviously, but a lot of it wasn't technically original. It was like spoofs on things. Yeah. I did not realize that when I was watching it as a child. I didn't know what the spoofs were. And this is an example of that. I had no idea that was this movie.
Yeah, I think other than the Simpsons episode, this movie kind of disappeared. I know one ever talks about this movie, especially when you're talking about more. I didn't even know it was Martin Scorsese until I checked out the DVD and like looked at the box and was like, oh, I did not realize this was him.
Yeah, same. Yeah. I didn't really know about this movie until we were looking into, Gothic films.
Yeah. I remember this was one of the first big like remakes I was aware of when I was a kid, because I remember my mom and grandmother had like seen the original one or rented the original one and watched them together or something and talked about that. So it was interesting that this was I read an article online that I don't recall, but they called it the first gritty reboot, before before that was a term. Taking a movie that had more, from what Ebert says, clear-cut morals and kind of muddying the waters a bit.
Yeah. Interesting.
All right, let's dive in. We got some muddy waters to start. There's rippling water and dramatic music. There's an eye, like we see eyes, we see silhouettes and shapes. And there's this odd framing device the movie has where it seems to be Juliette Lewis reading an essay she wrote to a class.
Yeah. And you kind of forget about it because it kind of happens at the beginning and then nothing really happens with it.
Yeah. And then she says she also closes the movie in voiceover. And I'm like, was this added after? Because also the movie is called Cape Feare. We get to Cape Feare like, I don't know, 10 minutes before the end of the movie.
I couldn't believe how little of this movie had to do with water.
I know.
I was so confused.
It's a weird, and I wonder if they did that for that reason. Like they were just really attached to this title and was like, you know what, we got to get somebody saying it early on.
Yes. Yeah.
So that fades away to what you mentioned, the ripped De Niro hanging from the ceiling in prison. And so what has superseded my Simpsons memory is Charlie's Angels Full Throttle, because and what triggered me is the score. They use the same music cue when Justin Theroux is released from prison in Full Throttle. And I was like, oh my God, they just wholesale took this from Cape Feare.
That's so funny. I actually really recognized the music, and I thought it was just like, because it gives me Shining vibes, like the dong dong. But I wonder if somewhere in the back of my mind I was remembering that because I loved Full Throttle.
Full Throttle is my all-time greatest movie. So once again, so grateful that someone stole from the best for that movie, because I had no idea. That scene is iconic.
It's so good.
So De Niro's like ripped as fuck. He gets released from prison and he like lightning strikes. It's all very moody. This movie is going to turn out to be so much more campy than I was expecting it to be. The tone is all over the place with this movie.
It's wild.
And he like kind of walks into the camera, like the camera almost practically bumps him in the chest. And this shot gets repeated quite a bit early on in the movie. We meet Juliette Lewis as the daughter, Danny. She is speaking Spanish to their housekeeper, Miss Graciela, who will become a pivotal plot point later, unfortunately, which I didn't remember at all. Jessica Lange has her short haircut. She does logo design, seems to be her job. And then they're in the theater together. They go to the movies to watch Problem Child. And I'm just like, can you imagine getting out of jail after 14 years and the first movie you go to see is Problem Child? Like, oh my god! Like I remember both of those movies because I mean, there weren't as many movies in the 90s, I guess. Yeah. But just so they're trying to watch. The family is trying to watch Problem Child. Yeah. But De Niro's smoking his cigar. They're just trying to enjoy this broad John Ritter comedy. And he's smoking this cigar and that he lights with like a light up bikini lighter. So they end up going to get ice cream after. Juliette Lewis mentioned she thinks that her dad should have fought the guy. We start to realize that De Niro is stalking them because he buys their ice cream. So we're laying the groundwork for this conflict. Meanwhile, Sam, Nick Nolte, is with Ileana Douglas. I did not get her character's name. But I don't know if she dated Martin Scorsese for a long time. I don't know if she was dating him at this point or if this is how they met. But she's very pretty in this movie, and does not suffer from like bad 90s styling. Like she just looks timeless. Yeah, she looks does. Timeless and gorgeous. They're playing like full contact racquetball together. Like a horny racquetball.
Yeah, way too much touching for racquetball.
Yeah, and it's giving us like both their relationship and just like this is a class of people that plays racquetball.
Right. Yeah. And like I'm pretty sure on like their lunch break. Like that's the vibe. Yeah.
It's in their office.
Yeah.
Does that still exist? Do offices still have racquetball courts?
I don't know.
What do yuppies do now?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not a office worker. Sound off in the comments.
I know. I don't know.
Yeah.
So we get this hint that like she is flirting with him, but he actually hasn't done anything with her. Yeah. But he doesn't want his wife to get suspicious. So we're initially like, oh, okay, he's a good moral guy.
Yeah.
So out in the parking lot, though, Max, who's Robert De Niro, takes Sam's keys, his keys. I'm going to take the keys. De Niro's accent work.
It's so much fun.
He's making strong choices, which I appreciate, but wow.
Yeah. Oh, I wish I could remember. There was one specific word he said. Oh, it was like, I think he said like accelerate or something like that. And I just kept saying it over and over again in my head. Accelerate. Because he never says the first syllable. Accelerate.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, dropping that, the kind of lazy Southern.
Yeah.
He I don't know if it's because I'm just used to him playing quiet, brooding characters, but him talking so much.
Oh my god, he doesn't shut up.
His lines of dialogue are endless, and that huge accent he's putting on. Yeah. Really, and his old face. I couldn't put all those together. I had a really hard time.
Yeah.
Believing his character. So they kind of talk at each other a bit. We still don't really know exactly what's going on between them, but Max kind of threatens Sam by saying, you got to learn about loss. And we learn we're in New Essex. I had no idea they were in Florida, but I guess they're in Florida.
Yeah.
Sure.
I don't know what it is. It might be because what's that alligator movie?
Lake Placid?
Lake Placid. For some reason, I associated this movie really strongly with an alligator. I don't know if any
Oh.
marketing had an alligator or
The
crocodile.
Simpsons has an alligator.
That's why. That's
Bart
so
goes
funny.
to jump off the boat and there's an alligator.
Yes. Oh my God, that's so funny. So in my mind, like I was like, no, it makes sense. They're in Florida. That is so funny.
It all blends together.
Oh my God.
while researching the Simpsons stuff, and I don't have Disney Plus, so I was just trying to find clips of it on YouTube.
Yeah.
But I learned that there was an off-Broadway play called Mr. Burns, a post-electric play written by playwright Anne Washburn. And the plot of this is it's the post-apocalypse, and a group of survivors are talking about that episode of The Simpsons.
That is incredible.
And I guess there's then 7 years later, the surviving group has formed a traveling theatrical troupe that specializes in performing Simpsons episodes. And then the final act is 75 years after that, where this Cape Feare episode of The Simpsons is now like a myth, like it's like a new cultural myth, and it's being performed as a musical.
Oh my God.
So I want somebody to produce this play and watch it.
Listeners, you can't see my face right now. My mouth was agape. I am going to petition my local high school to make this their play next year.
Yes.
That sounds like so much fun.
And and again, until we watched this movie, I didn't realize how iconic that episode was.
Yeah. Seriously.
Is that the most iconic episode of The Simpsons? Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
This is not a Simpsons podcast, but I'd be curious to know what people think is like the most iconic Simpsons episode.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely, I think, is sort of, I wouldn't say like the sum is greater than its parts, but it definitely has a greater impact than its, inspiration, or I would say so.
No, I think so. It's totally subsumed it just by the fact that it was on all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So back to the actual movie. So alligators in this one, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We learn that Danny has to go to summer school because she was caught with marijuana. Mm-hmm. There's a love scene between Sam and Lee, his wife. It's shot like through this weird X-ray filter. Some of the stylistic choices I don't understand.
Yeah.
And she gets up to have her like post-coital cigarette, and she sees Max outside on the wall. I think this is when the fireworks are going off. We're leading up to 4th of July. So there's fireworks going off, and poor Nick Nolte, I'm assuming this was intentional to make him seem like the least intimidating man possible. But like, he's not unattractive, but next to De Niro, especially in that physique, like he just looks like the least appealing man ever. Even the dog does not listen to him.
Yeah. Poor guy.
I know. So we start to learn a little bit more about the connection. So Sam represented Max 14 years ago when Max raped a 16-year-old girl. Mm-hmm. And Sam was a public defender. But there was a report about the victim being promiscuous. And especially at that time, that would pretty much make the jury think she deserved to be raped.
Yeah.
So Sam buried that report, which ended up in turn helping Max get convicted for 14 years. Mm-hmm. So we've learned that story there, and that moral quandary that kind of hangs over the movie. So there's a really funny sequence though, where Danny is asking a lot of questions about why this man is dangerous. And her mom, somebody says something about flashing, and she's like, I know what a flasher is. And Jessica Lange says, well, I certainly didn't mean to insult you. I'm sure you've been flashed before.
Yes.
Her delivery, that was great.
That was great.
Not a lot of zingers in this movie, so I appreciated that one. So we get some more stalking scenes. Max stops Sam on the street. They start arguing about compensation and have this interesting thing where Sam is like, oh, I'll give you, I forget what the amount is, but like $10,000 or something. And then Max is like, well, I said you have 14 years. That's not even minimum wage. Like, why, this is an insult to me. And so Sam goes home and finds out that the dog is dead. And he's died of poisoning. So they immediately believe that Max is the one who's done it. Yeah. Oddly, they bring him in and like strip search him while Sam is there. Like the victim watches this part.
Right. I don't think they usually let that happen. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I'm like, that's very strange. I don't know if is this supposed to show how entwined Sam is with the police or something? I don't know, but they strip him down to his like red leopard bikini briefs, which is an interesting costume choice. We are then at a 4th of July parade. They get in a fight at a 4th of July parade. And then we get one of the more harrowing scenes of the movie where Max targets the Ileana Douglas character. Yeah. And he buys her drink and she starts talking to him and really flirtatious. She's really charmed by him. She's broken it off with Sam. I don't know if we've realized it at this point, but at some point Sam has had an affair and Lee found out about it. And that's been a kind of a wedge between them. But in this case, he broke it off with her because he knew he'd be tempted. So in her moment of weakness, she's like, he stands her up. So she goes out drinking. She's going to meet a man. He ends up handcuffing her and beating her and like biting off a chunk of her cheek.
Yeah, it's gruesome.
And there's been no real violence in this movie up until this point. So that was really, really harrowing. Yeah.
And I cut in with a story of levity.
Please.
So I asked one of my coworkers, I had the DVD in hand at work and I said, oh, have you seen this? And he just goes in on a story about how he saw this in theaters back in 1991. Him and one of his like girlfriends went to go see it. And he dared her before they walked into the theater to laugh at an inappropriate time. And so I'm sure you can think of the time that she chose to laugh at was this time. And he said that it was one of those situations where it's like she just started laughing and then he started laughing and then they couldn't stop because, and then he said, so, and actually he's from Texas, he's from the South. And so he said that he was in a theater, it was like packed. And he said half of the people there started laughing with them, started cracking up, and the other half was absolutely mortified. And one woman actually screamed, yeah, let that bitch get it.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So interesting social take on that. Yeah, I absolutely lost it at that story. And then actually watching the scene and imagining that half of the theater that was mortified at all of these people laughing.
I wish I could have been there.
I know.
Movie theaters in the 90s in Texas were a gem. Like my family was in Texas, so we would go often during the summer to like the second run theater, where it's like probably $1 or $2 to see movies. And it would be like this, where you're seeing a movie, it's packed. I vividly remember seeing The Hand That Rocks the Cradle in theaters. And when Rebecca De Mornay pops up and hits the husband in the face with the shovel, this guy in the theater just goes, holy shit, like just screams at the top of his lungs. And when Annabella Sciorra punches Rebecca De Mornay and sends her across the table, half the theater like stood up and clapped. Like it was
Oh,
greatest film going. I miss that so
I
much.
love that. Oh, I love that so much.
It was so fun. So yeah, I envy that experience he had.
Yeah.
Perfect time for this.
Right. So yeah, nice bit of levity, I guess, to go with that truly horrific scene.
Yes. So back to the horror.
Yeah.
Poor Ileana Douglas is all bandaged up and will
Yeah.
literally never see her again in the rest of
Yeah.
this movie, which
Yeah.
is a downright shame. Sam tries to convince her to testify, and she doesn't want to because of misogyny towards victims, which is a
Yeah.
really interesting point I think this movie's raising, especially in 1991. So the lieutenant suggests that Sam uses his family as bait. Sam's like, oh, absolutely not. But that'll come up again later. So Sam hires a private investigator, and the PI, what was his name again? I didn't write it down until later.
Oh, all I can
Sort of a
remember is
K.
actually Jessica Lange does have zingers in this movie because she asks him, she names off all of these fictional PIs, and then she goes,
right.
Perry Mason, and he's like, no, he was a lawyer.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't know the actual PI's name.
We'll get it eventually. But the PI learns that Max had killed a fellow inmate in jail. And Lee then catches Sam talking to the Ileana Douglas character on the phone, and they get in this big fight about like his infidelity.
Yeah.
Just like not the right time for this. This movie has
Right.
a bad habit of painting women as like sluts or harpies or victims, even despite the fact that it's criticizing the justice system for doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Like the women characters in this film need a lot of work.
They do.
And then like, and he brings up her depression and how she didn't cook for him for 3 months. It's just like, sure.
Yeah. Right. He talks about how like he didn't want to I think he was trying to frame it as he didn't want her to find out about his infidelity because he didn't want her depression to get worse, which is really great husbandry.
Yes, because he wanted dinner on the table.
Yeah, he's hungry.
And then he like cartoonishly sleeps on the couch and like mutters to himself like under this too small blanket.
Yeah.
Like it's ridiculous. So Katie ends up making out who the PI is pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And the PI asks him to leave. Of course, he refuses. We get a scene where he pulls up and gives Lee the dog collar, saying he found it. And even though she's seen glimpses of this man 3 times during this movie, she has no idea who he is.
Yeah. And
She's
like,
seen
not to
him at
mention, like, he's very much painted as a bad guy. Like, he's not ambiguous.
No. Like, this random stranger comes up with your dead dog's collar. We've seen him in the movie theater. They saw him.
Yep.
They saw him at the parade. She saw him on the wall outside the house, lit by fireworks.
Right.
So not very observant.
No.
So she does not realize it's him until he says something about her sketches, her artwork. And he does say, though, that they should blame all this on her husband, and how if he hadn't betrayed us both, we might have been happy. And then he sees Danny and like tears away. And the PI then suggests that Sam hire some guys for a quote hospital job, which he says is 2 pieces of pipe and a bicycle chain. So Sam refuses, and he heads home where mother and daughter are making him chicken dinner.
Nice.
And at night, Danny has this pink and blue Swatch phone, which is so cute.
I didn't know that Swatch made phones. I remember I had Swatches in the 2000s. I did not know they made phones.
My cousin was very trendy and had like all of I know she had the Swatch watch. Yeah. And lots of cool things in the 90s. And so she has let me down by not having
a
this
Swatch phone. Yeah, that is incredibly depressing.
So while she's talking on she picks up her Swatch phone, and it's Max pretending to be her summer school teacher.
Yeah.
We see him hanging upside down, which is something he likes to do in his room. And he's telling her that class will be held in a different room. And I couldn't tell what movie. She has a movie on in the background, and I couldn't tell what it was. It almost looked like a Friday the 13th or something, but couldn't figure out what she was watching. So she goes to school, and for some reason, the school auditorium is in a creepy basement.
Actually, our auditorium wasn't in a basement, but to like get to it, it kind of looked like that. So
Really?
I understand. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
it like she has to go in this basement, and then the auditorium goes down even further. I'm like, we're just like subterranean at this point.
Yeah. Well, not to mention Florida, you're not having basements.
This is below the water table. Like this is such a flooding
Yeah,
hazard.
seriously.
Yeah.
That's why no one's there. They know it's a hazard.
They know it. Yes,
Yeah.
they have this cute little set built that's going to get
It's very
washed
adorable.
away.
Yeah.
It's very Red Riding Hood, Big Bad
Mm.
Wolf thematic. They're leaning into this imagery.
Yep.
Max is there in the house smoking a joint, which he puts out on his tongue
Oh,
and gives to her.
I audibly went, ugh.
Yeah, she does too, which is funny. And they have this like long conversation about sexual freedom and
Mhm,
Henry Miller, an author I've never read.
mhm.
And even though she figures out who he is, she keeps talking to him.
Yeah.
And he says he won't hurt her. And he's trying to turn her against her parents, saying they punished you for their sins.
Mm.
And at that point, we had overheard a conversation between the parents about how they used to smoke pot, and now
Yeah.
she's in trouble for smoking pot. But he says that she should forgive them, and they talk about salvation and paradise.
Mm.
And then he wants to put his arm around her, and she says, okay. But then he puts his thumb in her mouth.
Oh, I hate it so much.
It's so icky.
Ugh.
And she kind of like goes with it.
Yeah.
And then he does it again.
Ugh.
And then he kisses her.
Ugh.
And she's obviously confused. You know, she's
Yeah.
what, 15, 16. She
Mhm.
wants to be rebellious.
Yeah.
So he walks away just like panting heavily, which is really
Yeah.
upsetting. And
Yeah.
so she runs away crying.
Mhm.
Even though after this, though, she's kind of like, I get maybe she's using it just to get to her parents, but she starts like almost defending him from
Yeah.
this point further. But the parents do find out about it. And so Sam
Mhm.
calls the PI, and he wants to pay these guys to do the hospital job.
Mhm.
And the PI is drinking his whiskey and Pepto-Bismol, which, considering my love for whiskey and my current digestive issues, maybe I'll try it.
Yeah, not a bad
It
idea.
sounds disgusting.
Yeah, I think it might make a lot of things worse.
Yes. So Sam makes the bad decision, though, to basically alert Max that this is going to happen. He threatens him in a bar.
Yeah. Yeah.
And De Niro he goes off on this whole threat. And De Niro just goes, could you repeat that?
Mhm.
And he tells Sam to read the Bible between Esther and Psalms.
Mm.
We haven't really talked about it. He has all these biblical tattoos. When they strip him in the jail cell, we see he's got Bible verses. He's got like truth, justice, all these things above his red leopard bikini briefs. So we cut to De Niro's pulling into a parking lot. He has a bumper sticker on his car that says, "You're a VIP on earth, I'm a VIP in heaven," which is totally a sticker you would see in the South, just like on any random vehicle. And before this, I forgot to mention, so Sam is trying to caution Danny against ever seeing Max again.
Mhm.
And she is being kind of coy about it. And he gets really aggressive with her and like grabs her face really violently.
Mhm.
So that's a little upsetting.
Poor Danny.
And I know she's really got it rough in this movie.
Lot. Yeah.
She has no one really to turn to.
Mhm.
But so back at this random parking lot, the guys show up with the 2 pipes and the bicycle chain to beat the shit out of Max while Sam watches.
Yeah.
And Sam, ever being a Looney Tune cartoon, like just as Max gets the upper hand and beats the shit out of the other guys, Sam knocks over a bunch of cans.
Yeah.
And like alerts him to his
Of course.
presence.
Yeah.
So Max hires an attorney
Mm-hmm.
who is played by Gregory Peck, who played
Oh.
Sam in the original movie.
That's funny. I didn't even put that together.
Yeah, I just knew he was in it. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden he showed up and I'm like, oh, I only seen To Kill a Mockingbird. So
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I don't think obviously I don't recognize Gregory Peck, but that's a fun little callback.
And he's in full Colonel Sanders regalia.
Yes.
Like looks white suit,
Yep.
doing that foghorn leghorn accent, everything.
Yeah.
And De Niro is full on like, I have just been barely scratched in an automobile accident, but I'm going to ham it up for all it's worth. Like he has so many bandages on. Gregory Peck is like carrying him in and out of court.
Yeah.
He's really hamming it up. And so the whole point of this, like Sam tried to get this restraining order that was delayed in court, but now they grant the restraining order, but it's against him.
Yeah.
And there's a weird line where the judge mentions, quote, our great Negro educator, Booker T. Washington. Which I guess is just, I was like, I have no idea where this movie is set, but I guess it is set in the South when they say things like that.
Yeah.
So Sam has to go to this 2-day disbarment hearing now.
Mm-hmm.
And the PI, this is the first time I wrote down his name, Kursek. He points out that this gives Katie an opportunity. So now they do decide to use the family as bait.
Yeah.
They kind of fake putting Sam on an airplane.
Yeah.
So Max thinks that the house is vacant with just the women inside. And Sam is still hiding in the house. Juliette Lewis is kind of teasing him a lot. Like, you can't stand up, Dad. You need to crawl around on the floor.
Yeah.
She's enjoying it. There's a scene where she picks up a random tin of Charles chips from the porch. Like someone just dropped them off, a giant tin of chips.
Yeah.
And she picks it up and there's a book from Max underneath.
Yeah.
But like, do they not wonder who these chips, do they just regularly get giant tins of chips delivered to their porch?
Is that a Southern thing? You guys have
I did not know about these chips. I have a friend who bought these chips, but I think it was when he was in Maryland.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, I did not know what these Charles chips were until recently. But the tin has not changed in 30 years.
That's kind of fun. I might try some Charles chips.
Try some. They're in a big tin, so they can't get crushed.
Nice.
People love them.
Perfect for hiding books.
Perfect for hiding sleazy novels underneath for the 15-year-olds you want to seduce. So with chips and smut literature. So I wrote down a quote and I didn't write down who said it, but I think it was the PI who says the South has a fine tradition of savoring fear.
Yeah, that sounds like something the PI would say.
Yeah, he's very loquacious.
Yeah.
And he's set up this trap is a strong word, but they've tied this teddy bear. They've tied like fishing line to this teddy bear so they'll know when someone comes into the house.
Yeah, very Home Alone.
Yes. And it starts to jiggle, but it turns out it's just a shutter that's open.
Mm-hmm.
So the PI closes it and he goes into the kitchen to have his Pepto and whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
And the housekeeper, Mrs. Graciela, is there. But it's actually De Niro dressed up as her.
I know. And I love that scene so much because it buys him like 1 second of surprise. Like,
I know. It's totally unnecessary. The poor maid has been killed. And yeah, like, because the guy isn't even facing him. He's not even looking.
Purely done for the theatrics, done for the audience.
Oh, it's so over the top. And this is when I would have loved to have been in that 1991 theater.
Yes.
When this happened. This is like a Psycho moment.
It is.
And so he like strangles him with this piano wire, this very bloody fashion. The PI tries to shoot him, but kind of shoots his own ear off and dies. Yeah. So the family, of course, hears the gunshot. They come down. There's this ridiculous, I'm like, how am I supposed to take this scene? Ridiculously kind of campy scene where Nolte cannot stop slipping in the blood. Like they see him, they're screaming. Poor Juliette Lewis sees the maid, who seems to be, she's the only one who like talked to the maid like she was a real person. She spoke Spanish to her. So she's upset over that. And then Nolte goes to like, I think get the gun out of his pocket, but then like steps directly in the blood, is flailing all over the place. Jessica Lange goes for him. He pulls her into the blood. Like I was just like, is this supposed to be funny? Because I was that was when I was laughing at.
Oh yeah. And I don't think it doesn't add anything to the plot. It's not like that's like a second where, right? Yeah, they just like get up eventually. Yeah.
They get up and they run out, and then he just starts shooting the gun randomly into the air.
Yeah.
So they end up fleeing. We're finally, I mean, we're like literally 10 minutes from the end of this movie, and we're finally fleeing to Cape Feare, but we still haven't even seen the sign yet. So they are driving. There's like fruit stands and like crosses. I felt like this was a very like drive through the rural, like Southern streets. Like I've been on this drive before.
Right. Yeah.
And I definitely got my Simpsons vibes when all of a sudden they showed De Niro clutching onto the bottom of the car. I was like, oh my God, I forgot about that. But I was only remembering it from Sideshow Bob doing it and getting hit with the speed bumps.
Oh, that's right. Oh, I have to watch that episode. I have Disney Plus. I'll give you my login.
Please do. Yeah. I want to see, because I feel like I couldn't find a clip. I feel like they parody the teddy bear scene too, but I couldn't find that on YouTube. But I found a lot of other scenes taken from this movie. So we finally get to Cape Feare. We see the like rippling water from the credits with the sign. And they get on their boat, which is called the Moana.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. I've never seen Moana. I didn't know what Moana means. I guess it just means ocean.
Yeah.
Which is some irony considering they're on a river.
I was gonna say it's like a bog.
Yeah. I don't understand the geography of where they are, especially as we're getting into like it seems like they're on a monsoon in the middle of the Atlantic.
Yes.
But so they're on the boat. But Robert De Niro, Max, he strangles Sam unconscious, ties him up and cuts the anchor. So they're adrift, again, in a river, but it's very dramatic river. He locks Danielle in the hold. He attempts to rape Lee, and he drags Sam in through the window so he can watch all this happen.
Yeah.
He goes to light a cigar, and Danny squirts him in the face with lighter fluid.
My favorite part of the movie, especially because like it's established like that as soon as Lee says something along the lines of, you know, she wanted her to fly. I went, oh, she's going to absolutely fuck up De Niro. Like
that's a good point. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I was like, oh, she's gonna do something great, and that's such a good scene. Just squirts it. He just becomes engulfed. Smoking kills people.
It's very satisfying. Like the way it's shot. The stunt guy goes all in because this is literally a man with his face on fire. Like there is no like it's intense.
Right. Like Hereditary who?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, exactly. So he jumps off the boat. But of course he like comes right back like a horror movie villain.
Yeah,
he's all he's all like Jekyll and Hyde face now, all blistered.
Yeah.
The boat is out of control. There's a lot of like cheap camera shots where the camera is clearly just like wiggling around and the actors are going like, it kind of takes the tension out of the scene.
Yeah.
And eventually like De Niro has Nolte pinned down, and he is just acting to 11, like acting to the back of the auditorium. They're in Florida. He is acting to Alaska. Like he is chewing the fucking scenery.
Yes.
And every time he spins his head, it goes like,
I lost it. Because honestly, up until about that point, I was taking the movie like pretty seriously. Like it definitely had those dramatic moments, but like I was like, okay, no, like I see the vision. Like this is a thriller. when he would spin his head and you would literally hear the Looney Tunes noises, I was like, we're done here. We're done.
It's Parker Posey with her feather dress from Josie and the Pussycats.
Yes. Oh my God. It is.
I had to rewind because I was like, did I make that up in my head? Like I had to rewind it. I'm like, oh my God, no, it's actually doing that. Blows my mind.
Oh, fantastic.
But
Good choice.
at least, as you said, I think they know exactly what they're doing by adding in that sound effect.
Yeah.
That's a choice. The boat is out of control as they're screaming. He calls Nick Nolte a self-righteous fuck. And which, pot kettle, we've got to the point where the two men, they're mirrors of each other, all that stuff. The women just jump off the boat, which seems like a terrible idea because they're in like raging rapids at this point. In a month, typhoon, like there's just sheets of rain coming down.
Yeah, they must be incredible swimmers.
They just leap off.
Yep.
And then Sam manages to cuff Max's ankle to the boat. The boat crashes against a rock, which is like it just looks so weird. We just keep watching this boat crumple. And I guess I'm sure that's actually how it would happen, but I want some dramatic license maybe with like an explosion or something, because it just looks like this cheap little boat crumpling.
Yes, it looks like paper mache. Like things are just like falling off. The boat is like literally moving 180 degrees. Like it's tipping to one side, it's tipping to the next. Like, I don't know. I don't think that boat was, seaworthy at all.
Oh, no. Because it's just a rock. Like, I mean, you'd think it would just kind of like skip off it or something. Right. But yeah, this boat is sheared in two by this rock. And they wash up on this, I guess I almost said shore, but riverbank.
Yeah.
And Max is still chained to this piece of boat debris, and Sam's gonna kill him. He has the rock. He's gonna smash his head in, and he goes down to do it. But just before he can do it, the wave washes Max away.
Yeah.
And he's speaking in tongues, just like Sideshow Bob getting hit in the face with the rake. And I mean, De Niro is just hamming it up.
He really is.
I couldn't believe what I was watching.
Yeah.
He's like,
I had to take a second to be like, is this a foreign language? Like, when did they introduce this to his character? Like, I was like, what is the point of this? And then I realized it was some sort of speaking in tongues.
Yes. And then he starts singing a song about being bound for the promised land.
Yeah.
And the debris with the cuff around his ankle pulls him down under the water.
Yep.
We see Jessica Lange with this really striking mud work done to her. She raises her head up and just like, she looks so messed up and beautiful at the same time. The makeup artist who put the mud on her did a phenomenal job. And the family reunites, and then we get the end of Juliette Lewis's essay.
Yeah, yeah.
She says, if you hang on to the past, you die a little every day. And I know I'd rather live.
Which is also funny, though, because she says something along the lines of the fact that they never speak about it.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. So,
they never talk about it again.
Yeah. So it's just the three of them huddled up, muddy on a riverbank.
I know. And then she goes back to summer school and writes an essay about it.
Yeah.
I hope she got an A.
Boat turned to mulch.
God. So we will take a short break, and we'll be back with our Gothic recap, and we'll decide, is it Gothic? All right, Ghosties, we're back with our Gothic recap. All Gothic films have 4 elements: a girl, a guy, a house, and a haunt. our girl here, I think we've got an assortment of girls. I think it's the whole Bowden family.
Yeah, I think so. Poor family, all for their own reasons. At one point or another, they're the girl.
At one point or another, they're the girl. They've been drawn into this situation unwillingly, mostly because of a mistake that Sam made, which we didn't really talk about the ethical dilemma the movie poses, where he, we're actually not, I mean, I'm not exactly sure. Like, would De Niro have gone to jail, but for less time?
Yeah.
Would he have been completely, I guess we have no way of knowing, but he probably wouldn't have gotten that extreme sentence if Sam, as a defense attorney, hadn't buried that report, which technically is his job.
Right.
So he made the right, perhaps. Well, I guess it depends. What's the ethics here?
Right.
What do you think? Do you think he made the right decision?
See, this is why I couldn't be a public defender, because I'm yeah, hell yeah, he did. Of course he did. But I understand that as a public defender, your duty is to your client. So you should do whatever you need to do to get your client, But it's also I'm almost a little bit disappointed in the movie in that, yes, Scorsese made it more gritty, but I also feel like he didn't make it very ambiguous, because Sam says at some point that Max, fully confessed, said that he did it and he raped this girl. And then Sam says that he also bragged about doing it to other girls and he got off for those ones. So again, yes, technically Sam did not do his job. He did not do the ethical thing that he should have for his job. But the movie, in my mind, makes it perfectly clear, in my opinion, send that piece of garbage to jail for as long as possible. That's why I wish they had maybe left it a tiny bit more ambiguous. He could still be a murderous asshole, but they threw in those couple of details where I was just there's no redeeming qualities to this person.
That's a fair point. If instead maybe he had been, if the case itself were more tricky, and he didn't have the history. Yeah. He could just be someone driven mad by being in jail, make him a religious kook who went crazy in jail. Religious kooks go crazy all the time without having to be in jail.
Exactly.
That would actually be more interesting and make it more dicey. But it seems like, they were afraid to make him too sympathetic.
Yeah. Also, I'm surprised because the older I get, the less long 14 years seems. So honestly, it doesn't even seem that bad, And he was keeping busy. He read. He killed his inmates.
He learned to read.
Oh, that's right. He learned to read. That was probably a good thing for him.
He got in great shape.
Yeah, seriously. 14 years, not even that bad. Just,
the way the housing market is, I'm tempted.
I know, right? Seriously.
I've been watching a lot of gruesome, bleak documentaries lately. But sometimes these people get sent to these really cushy, upstate New York prisons, where Martha Stewart went.
Oh, yeah, those are so nice.
That seems nice. One of them I was watching, they were like, oh, we went to go visit our dad in prison, but he was too busy playing tennis.
Yeah, they're playing pickleball. Oh, yeah. Kind of to do with that, I went to a program with my mom, and it was something about getting rid of stress. And the guy presenting it said, he asked the room, if you could have someone control your life, would you let them? And then, he said, put your hand up if you think you would be happier if someone else he said, put your hand up if you think that you would be happiest controlling your own life and not letting someone else control your life. And I thought the room would be more split. I was the only one who didn't raise my hand because I would love it if someone controlled my life. Yeah. So he, just sit back, and I don't want to dig a hole here because I fully support prison reform and America has an incarceration problem, but just chill.
Just chill out. This was the 90s. It's fine. That's what people did.
Yeah. Right. You get you know, if you end up in prison in the 90s, you're probably going to be an extra in a Scorsese film someday. So
That's true.
you know, count your blessings.
And I forget what happened to him, but like he got out of jail and had a lot of money. Like he gets a nice car.
Oh, he has such a nice car.
Was it? I think his mom had died or something. I forget what it was.
Oh.
They mention how he got that
Yeah,
money left to him.
That's the other thing that, you know, they didn't really even, I feel like, have to spend more time on, but maybe just like added one more line of dialogue. Because yeah, he says that pretty quickly. I think that his mom dies, and then I think he was also engaged or something.
Yeah.
Something about like losing a love. I'm not sure, but that's why I wish that they had just thrown in like one more line of dialogue, because either I missed it or I misheard it, or I'm not sure. But
Yeah.
you know, whatever. That's fine. You're in great shape, guy. Get on a
one or
dating
two
app.
fewer Bible verses, and more character development would have helped.
Yeah.
So we kind of addressed our guy, Max.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Anything you want to add about him?
No. I don't think any more opinions on him. How about you?
No, I think the only thing is, the one thing that makes this a little different is that instead of the Gothic guy luring them in, he's kind of chasing them. He's pursuing them and stalking them, which is just a little different than what we're used to seeing.
That's a really good point. Yeah, he's not well, but you could say that he's luring Danny. He kind of has that classic Gothic guy in that sense, you know.
Very true.
Toying with her sexuality and, you know, being gross and creepy to her. He's kind of doing it to her.
That's very true. Yeah, with the whole big bad wolf and the auditorium thing.
Yeah.
That's a good point. You could see that going in a different direction if this were a different movie.
Right. And he literally lures her there because, you know, he calls and pretends to be her teacher.
Yeah.
Creepy.
Well, he can lure and he can chase. He's a versatile stalker.
Yes. He's got a lot of stuff going on.
He's almost superhuman. Like the movie almost makes him into the Terminator, because the guys beat the shit out of him with the pipe and the chain. Yeah. But he just turns around and kicks the shit out of them like it's nothing.
Right. And and like we mentioned it earlier, he was on fire. Like it wasn't just like, I fell on some holes. Like he is fully engulfed. Like, and that doesn't slow him down. He jumps in some dirty river water and comes out ready to fight still.
Comes right back onto this boat that is careening out of control.
Yeah. No, he really is. I would not have been surprised if there was, I'm assuming there isn't like a horrible cheesy sequel or anything, right? Like this is,
I don't think so.
Yeah, I would not be surprised though if they had made one where he survived drowning in the river.
Well, it does make me think again of Charlie's Angels Full Throttle, and when Justin Theroux just walks through the fire.
Yes.
I wonder if they were inspired by this. Like, you know what? Fire's not going to stop him.
Apparently not.
So our house is the houseboat, which I think we both thought would be a little more iconic, considering the movie is called Cape Feare, and it's just a little like paper boat.
Yeah, really. Also, it's really not a houseboat. It's more of like just a nice yacht or something.
Yeah, it's got one little mattress.
Yeah.
And then like a tiny little kitchen.
Right.
And then the hold, which is just like a cubby.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that's it. There's nothing else. That's true. Yeah, you'd think there'd be a shower or something on a houseboat. If I learned anything from Captain Ron, there should be a shower on a houseboat.
Yeah. I don't know a whole lot about houseboats, but I would think at least more levels, maybe.
Yeah.
I envision more wood
comfort.
paneling. Yeah.
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 It's very tight quarters. You'd think this family would be able to afford a little swankier of a boat.
Right. Yeah.
Especially since they're just keeping it on a river. Like they're not even keeping it anywhere fancy in some marina.
Yeah, they just docked it on, it looked like a riverbank. Can you do that in Florida? Apparently you can.
I mean, what can't you do in Florida?
That's a good point. It's a good point.
Another reason I should have known it was in Florida is when the PI says to him, if he comes in your house, you can kill him.
You can kill him.
Like, oh, that's practically on the license plate of Florida still.
Like they encourage it.
Yes. So I should have realized then
Literally.
that it was Florida.
Yeah.
So last but not least is our haunt. There's no supernatural element in
Mhm.
this film, despite De Niro being almost supernaturally like impervious to physical harm. But
Mhm.
it does fit into Southern Gothic tropes.
Yes.
And there is that large element of guilt that's hanging over it, especially with the Sam character.
Yeah.
But I found a new article that I'll link to in our show notes
Mhm.
about Southern Gothic.
Mm.
And it talks about what we've talked about this briefly before when we talked about Interview with the Vampire.
Mhm.
But the Southern Gothic style borrows the hyper-aware, emotionally rich style of the Romantics and the Gothic interest in isolation and decay, and applies these ideas to their own region of the United States to develop a unique literary style.
Mm.
Overlapping characteristics include isolation and marginalization, violence and crime,
Mhm.
sense of place,
Mhm.
freakishness and the grotesque,
Ooh.
destitution and decay, and oppression and discrimination.
Hmm.
And it says that it is common to find innocence surrounded by cruelty and corruption.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll go on a bit more in a second, but I think that's appropriate because especially with the Danny character, she's like
Yeah.
the innocent one who is surrounded by, I wouldn't say cruelty or corruption really, but just something's off,
Yeah.
that's threatening her world.
Right. Like morally gray characters or a straight up violent character. She doesn't really have a positive character in her life.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that does fit. And then, if we talk about violence and crime, that's what this movie is really about.
Mhm.
We have a strong sense of place. I mean, we have a strong sense of this town. I didn't realize where it
Yeah.
was, but like we get a sense of this little town, this community
Right.
that they're in. And then freakishness and the grotesque. De Niro is freakish in his toned body and his tattoos and his
Yeah.
accent. Like he is just this kind of monstrous figure.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I've talked about it on this podcast or if it was just a conversation we had. But I feel like I've talked to you about this story before. Good Man is Hard to Find. The one about
Flannery
the
O'Connor.
family. Yes. The one about it. I was getting big, like that was in the back of my mind watching this movie because it's about a family that they take like a wrong turn and they find the criminals on the side of the road. And basically it's this grandmother's sort of point of view of violence happening to her family. And the grandmother is kind of painted as this, she's a little bit like annoying and nuisance in the story, but she's ultimately like this innocent character. And so I was just thinking of that a lot with Danny. She's kind of, and she is the point of view technically.
That's true, actually.
Yeah. So just kind of seeing it from her perspective. And that is a very Southern Gothic, like dripping willow tree, Southern Gothic story.
Yeah. And the grandmother is very religious in that story as well.
That's right.
And so that mirrors nicely with the De Niro character. I feel like there often is a lot of religion present in the Southern Gothic stories.
Right.
And this article also says that continuing innocence, it says morality is in question for many characters. It hinges on innocence and can the corrupt and tainted world even be saved? Can innocence even be victorious?
Yeah.
And conclusions vary according to author. I think Flannery O'Connor is in the no side of that, considering how gruesome her stories are. And this one, it also leans on the no, since Sam almost smashes his head in.
Yeah. 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 It's definitely a very bleak ending, even though the three characters, the central family is fine and they survive. I mean, their loving housekeeper is dead. The PI is dead. It's very bleak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anything else you want to add about our Gothic elements?
I think the only other thing I would add is I think that this movie, something that I think Southern Gothic, because again, to bring up like another book, another novel, and actually we brought it up kind of briefly earlier, is To Kill a Mockingbird. The American court system is often, and just the whole American criminal justice system is very reactive instead of proactive. And you see that a lot in this movie. I mean, them not being doing anything to protect Sam and his family, just saying that, you know, something has to happen before they can do anything.
Right.
You know, even with Katie, you know, his original trial, you know, he had to commit that crime. He had to commit 2 other crimes before anything happened.
Right.
And to me, that rings very Southern Gothic, because that's one of the most terrifying things we've talked about.
Yeah. That's a very good point that I didn't pick up on. Yeah, the slow to act. People have to take care of themselves.
Yeah, very reactionary.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good point. I only have a couple of silly bonus Gothics.
Ooh, okay.
You made a very good scholarly point. I just want to remind us that there was a Panano in this movie. And there's a they play a Panano briefly, and the PI is strangled with the Panano wire.
Oh, that's right. Yes, there is a Panano.
So the Panano wire, and there's an extra in this movie, and the actor's name is Edgar Allan Poe IV.
Stop it! Really?
Can't get more Gothic than that. I
wow.
mean, he's right. He's got to be like the right. I couldn't. Yeah. I did like a brief Google, and I couldn't find anything about this guy actually being a descendant of Edgar Allan Poe. Yeah. But like, he would have to be.
Well, also just the fact that you could find out that that's what the extra's name is. I'm sure they don't usually make, you know,
it was in the credits.
Extras. Yeah,
it was like Prisoners or something, and it had like 4 to 8 names, and just that one jumped right off the screen.
Of course, yeah.
And so I tried to find information about him, but I couldn't find anything. I found someone who wrote a fake poem in the style of The Raven, but as if they were a GameStop employee. And they attributed it to Edgar Allan Poe IV, but it's not this same actor. Yeah. And just the hoops I had to jump through to understand what was happening. I was like, wait, is this real? Like, it really threw me for a loop.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting fake poem. So if you Google Edgar Allan Poe IV, it will come up.
Okay, good to know.
But with that, what do you think? Is this movie Gothic?
I would say it's Gothish. It has the Southern Gothic elements, but doesn't really, you know, land home for me. What about you?
I agree. I would say Southern Gothish.
Yeah.
I always want a supernatural element to it.
Right.
And I could almost see a parallel version of this story where the DeNiro character is inhumanly invincible and becomes less human and more a symbol for the guilt that is following them and taking a more extreme horror angle. And I think that's a film and a story that would interest me more.
Yeah, I think that this would make a really good like folk horror, you know, movie. Like almost like a Babadook kind of thing where it's like, you know, you don't really quite know what you're dealing with, and it doesn't die if you light it on fire.
Yeah, and the movie already has so many of those elements because he's so inhumanly quick, and they are never able to pick up where he is. I still don't understand where the Panano wire came from, because he had it from like the beginning of the movie, it seems.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say in the beginning of the movie, Sam says something, I think, to one of the cops or something about how he knows that he's, you know, Max has been in his house, but he doesn't know how he's getting in. And I don't think they ever reveal that. He just
I was really confused
somehow.
Too. Yeah, he says it later too, like, oh, he's been here this whole time, or
and they never It is. It feels like supernatural. Like I almost expected there to be like some like, you know, creepy basement aspect or something, and they just never explain it.
You could be living in the walls like Brahms.
Ooh, yeah. Brahms 3.
Brahms 3.
Starring-
We've got a De Niro and an Esther crossover planned now
Perfect.
in the Brahms universe. Well, thank you, Ghosties, for listening to us break down Cape Fear. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. And drop us an email at sogothicpod@gmail.com with comments and suggestions for future films. And follow us on Instagram for hints about what we'll discuss next as we continue discussing the Southern Gothic. Stay ghosty, y'all. Boo-bye.
Bye.